So welcome to the Vickers Machine Gun Collection and Research Association. In today's episode of Small Arms Schooling, what we're going to be looking at is what's been termed by Paul Cornish as the Triumvirate of Death, the impact of artillery, smokeless powder, and machine guns on the First World War. So what do we mean by this? Well, the early 1900s sees a massive change in weapons technology, which, when 1914 rolls around, leads to, in all honesty, the massive bloodletting on the Western Front, or what becomes the Western Front, as well as the Eastern Front as well. Now, this is due to chemical developments in the form of smokeless powder, which allows weapons to be more reliable than they've ever been before, along with providing greater range for artillery, machine guns, and rifles. What we then see is the development of the machine gun, which is made possible by smokeless powder. You know, machine guns are not reliable before smokeless powder becomes a thing, and it allows them to have a greater range. You know, Vickers guns at this point are sighted out to 2,700 yards, 27 football pitches is quite some distance, and they can provide firepower at a rate of what we call a cyclic rate of fire. If you just held the button down, it kept on firing of about 550 rounds a minute. Real combat rate of fire is usually 250 rounds a minute. Smokeless powder also, when combined with artillery, large guns of more than 20 millimeter in diameter, the shell being more than 20 millimeters. Smokeless powder allows those guns to fire at a greater range than ever before, and actually makes the guns harder to spot. One of the big jobs of armies in the First World War is identifying where enemy artillery is, so you can silence it. Silence being a euphemism for destroying it and or rendering the crews out of action, killing them or injuring them. This Triumvirate of Death leads to a situation where armies in the First World War, when they meet each other in action in a scale never seen before, have mass casualties. By the end of 1914, the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF, is for all intents and purposes an ineffective force. It's lost the vast majority of its men, killed, wounded, captured. There are still men who would come back to service, there are survivors, but it's no longer effective. The French army, by the end of 1914, has taken nearly 1 million men in casualties. Killed, wounded, captured, missing. And that is only possible due to the abilities and the firepower that this new technology brings to the fold. Armies were simply unable to comprehend the scale of combat at this point. They are unable to meet the demands that modern firepower provides. So the advent of new technology, smokeless powder, rapid-fire machine guns, and rapid-fire artillery, brings a new level of deadliness to the battlefield that has never been seen before. It's what becomes known as the empty battlefield. This is why trenches exist in 1914 to 1918. Trenches are not new. They're used all the way from the Middle Ages right up to the present. Armies have been digging ditches since armies have existed. But they become a necessity for everyday warfare in the First World War because new technology, the machine gun, the rifle, the bolt-action rifle and artillery, all using smokeless powder, makes the battlefield so deadly that soldiers have to seek cover underground to protect themselves. And that is why these three technologies brought together change the way warfare is fought.